Hi, welcome to Story Mode, the place where you'll find the stories you've been waiting for. Today, we introduce the story How I Became the Greatest Mage Ever.
In this world, power is not given. It is awakened.
Every legend begins with a story.
Chapter 1. The world had changed. Light rain drizzled softly outside Skybird Middle School. Beyond the school gates, a large crowd of parents waited anxiously, umbrellas raised against the rain. Their clothes were damp, but their eyes were filled with hope. Today was a pivotal day. A single exam would determine their children's future. Whether they could enter Skybird Magic High School, whether they could one day attend a prestigious university. Everything depended on their performance today. Yes, you heard that correctly. A magic high school. In this world, magic reigns supreme. Every child must complete 9 years of compulsory magic education. After mastering the foundations of magic theory and magical life skills, all students must take the same entrance examination. Only those who pass will be allowed to enter a magic high school and begin the path to becoming a true magician. The osmanthus blossoms, battered by the rain, fell along the straight paths of the campus. After the bell rang, students poured out, some walking alone, others searching for their friends, discussing the day's exams. Hey, Caleb, did you solve the problem about the 7 elemental magic types? Ice, fire, earth, water, wind, light, and lightning? Asked a pale-faced boy wearing a small bow tie. Of course, replied Caleb, a perfect student in every way, hair, height, and appearance. No wonder he's the top student. He can even solve such a difficult mixed element problem. Wait, isn't that Bryan? The one who only got a 6% on the final exam? Said Jack. The perfect student Caleb immediately glanced disdainfully at the lone boy with the umbrella and said, "This guy's about to end up like his dad, a pickup truck driver. Then he'd be a servant of your Luna family." The three spoke arrogantly, completely doesn't care about that the boy named Bryan beside them would hear. After their mockery, the three swaggered away, clearly confident they could get into the magic high school. Holding a black umbrella, Bryan stepped out through the school gate. He paused for a moment and looked back at the campus he was about to leave behind. After staring at it for a while, all the thoughts in his head condensed into a single sentence. How could this happen? And honestly, how could things have turned out like this? Bryan didn't originally belong to this world. In his previous life, he had been an outstanding student, the kind who could ace exams without even trying. A true genius. But he was lazy. He often turned in blank test papers and rarely put any effort into homework. Because of that, teachers and classmates constantly called him a slacker. Originally, Bryan had only planned to try a little harder during the high school entrance exam, just enough effort to casually place first or second in the entire school. Then, in the most humiliating way possible, he would laugh at that idiot Caleb and his group of friends before entering the best high school in the city. But fate had other plans. An accident changed everything. One day, after taking a nap on the hill behind the school, Bryan suddenly woke up in this world, a world of magic. His classmates were the same. His teachers were the same. Even his father and sister were the same. Yet the entire world had changed. In his old world, science ruled everything. But here, magic ruled the world. Mathematics, physics, and chemistry no longer existed. Instead, they had been replaced by things like black magic, white magic, and other mysterious forms of sorcery. Academic subjects had transformed into magical disciplines. Fire, ice, lightning, wind, earth, water. A world where power meant everything. And Bryan was now trapped inside it. Bryan was never against magic. In fact, he welcomed the change. But just before his exams were about to begin, the world changed drastically. And suddenly, Bryan became someone who knew nothing about magic. Overnight, the once brilliant student turned into an actual slacker, forced to endure endless ridicule and mockery. The only fortunate thing was this: the 9 years of compulsory magic education had only covered basic theory, mostly small bits of knowledge related to everyday life. Real magic wouldn't even be taught until high school. To become a true magician, there was one crucial step: magical awakening. It would take place during the high school opening ceremony in front of all the teachers and school leaders. Even students who barely understood magic theory still had a chance to awaken their own magical element. And Bryan, he truly loved magic. To him, this was a second chance, a fantastical rebirth. He dreamed of becoming a supreme mage, standing atop towering buildings, commanding fire and lightning, and doing his part to save the world. Unfortunately, this exam, well, after studying with everything he had, Bryan finally reached the point where he could understand the questions. As for whether the answers were correct, at least he tried. Bryan. Bryan! Among the crowd, a middle-aged man raised his hand and waved. Bryan looked toward the familiar face, slightly surprised. Dad? What are you doing here? I came to pick you up, his father said. You finished your exams, so you've graduated now. I found you a sales job in a close city nearby. Your uncle will teach you everything. After a few years of experience, you'll be able to work on your own. If things go well, you should be able to earn $4,000 or $5,000 a month. It's good to start working early. His father spoke calmly, but his eyes were filled with emotion. The world had changed, but Dad was still Dad. Bryan could still feel that same warmth and affection. His father had mentioned the sales job before. Bryan had originally planned to surprise him with good exam results. Instead, he could only bitterly accept the reality. He really was a poor student. But the problem was, Bryan refused to accept it. Society still had cars, cell phones, computers, refrigerators, all the same technological products as before. Even with magic in the world, those things hadn't changed at all. If you couldn't become a magician, then you would just become another ordinary worker producing these things. Bryan clenched his fist. What difference would that make from his previous world? No, I want to learn magic. According to the theory that nothing else in this world had changed, my talent shouldn't have changed either. If I worked a little harder in high school and caught up on the lessons I had missed, I could still become a truly talented mage, thought Bryan. Dad, I want to continue studying. After a long silence, Bryan finally told his dad what he was thinking. Didn't you dislike learning magic? Bryce Lambert raised an eyebrow, looking puzzled at his son. Bryan felt a little embarrassed. If he told the truth, his father probably wouldn't believe him anyway. Sigh, what a headache. Bryce looked at his son, who was about to turn 16, and gave him a warm, honest smile. It's okay. Dad won't blame you for not studying magic hard enough. Everyone has their own ambitions. Bryan shook his head. No, I really want to learn. Bryce looked at him seriously. Can you pass the exam? No, Bryan answered firmly. Bryce sighed softly, but his tone remained calm. Then that settles it. The ancients often said, Of all professions, only magic is noble. But they also said, every profession can produce an expert. After hearing this, Bryan couldn't help but smack his lips. Bryan now had to constantly convert a lot of information in his mind. But every time the world corrected his memories, the result left him speechless. For example, he clearly remembered his history teacher once saying that the founder of light magic was Thomas Edison. At that moment, Bryan felt as if everything he had learned up to this point in his life had been twisted inside his mind. Bryce gently patted his son on the shoulder, trying to comfort him. But when he noticed Bryan had gone quiet and was staring blankly ahead, his expression slowly changed. A father knows his son best. Bryce's smile faded slightly as his voice lowered. Are you serious? Do you actually want to continue learning? Yes, I want that awakening opportunity. Bryan looked straight at his father. I know it might be too late to regret things now, but I really want to study hard and become a magician. All he needed was one opportunity. Bryce remained silent for a moment. Bryan didn't speak again. Do you really want to learn? Bryce asked again. Yes, Bryan nodded without hesitation. At first, Bryan thought he was dreaming, that the world had played some kind of ridiculous joke on him. But now he understood. The world had truly changed. This wasn't a dream. All right then, Bryce finally said. I'll think of something. Dad, I already found a summer job at Skybird Magic High School. I'll be helping manage the library. I start the day after tomorrow. Once Bryan made the decision to study magic, he knew he had to give it everything he had. Whether he could enter a magic high school and gain the chance to awaken as a magician would depend on his father. But the knowledge he lacked, that would depend on his own effort. Even knowing his chances were slim, Bryan had already prepared in advance by finding a job there. The job barely paid anything. It only provided room and meals. But to Bryan, it was incredibly important. The library contained everything he needed to catch up on years of magical knowledge. Fortunately, he really was a genius. In a short time, he had already finished reviewing the first and second year curriculum, though saying that out loud made him sound incredibly stupid. Beside him, Bryce watched his son quietly. Seeing Bryan's determination moved him deeply. If his son truly wanted to pursue magic, why shouldn't he support him? After all, in this society, only magicians truly held status. A lifetime of sales work, no matter how many houses or cars someone owned, could never compare to the respect given to a magician who graduated from a magic academy. Let's go home first. Bryce nodded firmly. Leave the rest to Dad. This neighborhood was built along the side of a hillside. Following the narrow road, all the way to the end of the path, stood Bryan's home. It was a small house, only 1.5 stories tall. The paint had long since peeled away, revealing the red bricks beneath, and the yard was cluttered with old tools and scrap. Compared to the surrounding houses, it looked particularly shabby. Most of the neighboring homes had already been renovated. 3 or even 4 stories high, they looked clean and modern. Bryan's house, sitting quietly in the corner of the street, looked old and forgotten. Bryan, you're back! I've got good news for you. A boy suddenly jumped out near the doorway. This boy was Avery Cross, a childhood friend who had grown up in the same neighborhood as Bryan. What good news? Bryan asked. The little princess of the Luna family is back. I saw her at the manor gate today. You have no idea how beautiful she's become. She's practically an angel. Bryan glanced toward the large villa facing the street. The estate beyond the road was breathtaking. Every inch of land, flowers, trees, and trimmed hedges had been carefully cultivated. It was a garden so perfect that people across the entire city envied it. But now, that beautiful hillside garden was surrounded by tall iron fences. Bryan still remembered when they were younger. Back then, there were no fences. He used to lead the children from this neighborhood into the manor to play. At the very top of the estate stood several elegant European-style villas. To the children, they looked like castles from a fairy tale. And inside those castles lived a princess. She was about their age. Bryan often led the neighborhood kids to kidnap the princess and run around playing games together. But at some point, the fences were installed. Adults stopped allowing the children to enter the estate, and the princess who once played with them truly became a princess in a castle. Farther away, more untouchable. "You know what?" Avery said in a conspiratorial whisper. "I heard the little princess is now a top magic student at a prestigious university in the capital. She has an innate ice magic talent that no one else can match, and she can already cast ice magic at only 15 years old." Bryan froze. If Avery had said she won some national academic award, Bryan probably wouldn't have cared. But an ice mage? That was different. Most people awaken their first magic element at 16, during their first year of magic high school. Even after awakening magic, becoming a true magician requires years of training. You need spellbooks, magical tools, artifacts, and endless practice. Yet this girl was already casting magic at 15, a true child prodigy of the magical world. "Bryan," Avery said with a grin, "I actually feel sorry for you. If you had just tried a little harder back then, you might have won over the innocent little princess. Talented and beautiful." "That was just childhood nonsense," Bryan replied. "What's the point of talking about it now?" "Man, we're all jealous." Bryce Lambert, overhearing the boys, coughed lightly. "All right, that's enough chatter." He led Bryan back home. Once inside, Bryce spoke again. "I need to head out for a bit. Your sister is staying with her aunt tonight, so she probably won't be back." "Okay," Bryan replied. Bryce left in a hurry. Bryan walked slowly through the house. Nothing had changed. The world had changed. Science had become magic. Yet somehow, his family's poverty remained exactly the same. Why couldn't the heavens switch their lives with the family living in that mountain estate? Turning science into magic seemed easy enough. Surely swapping a few fortunes wouldn't be that difficult. With nothing else to do, Bryan decided to go for a walk. Maybe something else in this strange new world had changed as well. Following a rarely used moss-covered path, Bryan turned toward the main street. Just then, he spotted his father's old pickup truck parked nearby. Bryce used to be a driver for the wealthy families living on the mountain estate, but later, for reasons Bryan never fully understood, he was reassigned to logistics. Now, he mostly handled errands and supply purchases for the estate. Since then, their family situation had steadily grown worse. From behind the truck, voices drifted through the air. "Bryce, your request is rather rude. You know I've treated you well over the years. After what your son did, I still kept a job for you. If it were anyone else, I would have fired them immediately."
"Sir Eric, I beg you."
"Please consider this the last time I'll ask for your help." Bryce's voice sounded unusually humble. "Buying a place in Skybird Magic High School cost far too much money. You know my family's situation. We simply can't afford it. Why go this far for your useless son? He can't even get into Magic High School on his own. So just let him fend for himself. He's almost 16 already. And even if I help you get him into Magic High School, do you really think he'll become a magician? Becoming a magician isn't easy. It requires talent and hard work. And even if he studies there, can your family afford spellbooks? Magical artifacts? Magical tools? Without those things, he won't even become a beginner magician." "He really wants to learn this time." Bryce's voice remained steady. "Sir Eric, if you're willing to help me this once, my family will move out of Luna Family Village immediately, as Master Luna once requested. And I promise my son will never go near Miss Ashley Luna ever again." "Oh." Eric Luna paused thoughtfully. "That might be worth considering." Bryan leaned quietly against the wall, listening to the conversation. His emotions were a complicated mixture of anger, frustration, and disbelief. He had thought that when the world changed, Many of the cruel relationships in it would change as well. But it turned out, nothing had changed at all. The wealthy of the Luna family remained distant and powerful, and his father, struggling at the very bottom, still had to fend for himself, still had to bow his head, still had to ask others for favors. Eric Luna was the chairman behind Skybird Magic High School. In truth, with just a single word from him, Bryan could have entered the school easily. Yet, only after hearing Bryce Lambert say that their family was willing to move out of Luna Family Village, did Eric Luna finally agree to help. In the end, the conversation concluded with Bryce repeatedly thanking Eric. Eric soon drove away in his luxurious car, and what remained behind was an old pickup truck. Lonely, weathered, just like Bryce himself. This wasn't a dream, it was cruelly real. Leaning against the wall, Bryan breathed heavily. At that moment, he clearly understood something. His family's situation hadn't changed at all, nor had his lowly status. Titles like Master and Miss, which belonged to the old feudal society, had never truly disappeared. Even in this modern world, some people still toed above everyone else. Those who served them were no longer called servants, they were called workers. They no longer bowed or knelt. Yet their fate was still firmly controlled by those powerful families. The people at the bottom could still be manipulated at will, and Bryan had been born into exactly such a position, controlled, restricted, by a family named Luna. Something suddenly surged inside him, a violent wave of emotion. His fist clenched tightly. Then, he slammed it hard against the cold blue wall. Luna! I will never forget this moment. When the day comes when I become stronger, I'll make you regret everything that happened today. 10 times more? No, 100 times more. That evening, the father and son shared a wonderful time together. During the meal, Bryce casually mentioned something. Bryan, you should just live at school. I'm thinking of renting out the house. It'll bring us some extra income. Bryan knew the truth. The house wasn't really being rented out. It was essentially being sold to Eric Luna. The house itself was dilapidated and worthless, but the land beneath it was extremely valuable in the city. Okay, rent it out, Bryan replied calmly. I don't come home often anyway. But what about Sis? Bryan pretended he didn't know anything. Your sister will stay with your aunt, Bryce said. To be honest, it's hard for 2 grown men like us to take care of her. She's a sensible girl. We don't need to worry too much. All right, Bryan said quietly. Just remember to visit me at school sometimes. Okay. Bryce finished the last sip of soup and stood up. I'm going to bed. Can you do the dishes? Yeah, replied Bryan. Bryan watched his father walk away. As he looked at his father's back, something comes to his mind. He would live at school. His sister would live with their aunt. Both children would be settled. But then, where would this middle-aged man live? In the end, Bryan chose not to reveal the truth. Bryce Lambert's willingness to make such a sacrifice was a father's duty and his pride. He wanted his son to believe, study with confidence. Your father will take care of everything. Bryan understood this. If he exposed the truth, his father would only feel ashamed and powerless. After all, what man wouldn't want to be the kind of father who could solve any problem for his son? Bryan couldn't say it. Others might disrespect their fathers, but he never could. This shabby old house. He could give it up, but only for at most 4 years. Once he mastered magic, he would gain everything. Because in this world, magic ruled supreme, and he would become a powerful mage, one who stood above all others. The 2 months of summer break passed in the blink of an eye. Bryan spent almost all his time buried in books. The library at Skybird Magic High School had everything. Books about magic were just as complex and numerous as those about science, a truly endless ocean of knowledge. Fortunately, Bryan learned quickly. At the very least, he was no longer far behind. Well, he had already mastered the basics taught during the 8 years of compulsory magic education. September 1st finally arrived. For every magic student, this was an incredibly important day. It marked the first step toward becoming a magician. And more importantly, it would determine which element of magic each student would awaken. Awakening, as the name suggested, meant releasing the hidden magical power within one's body. Bryan hadn't slept at all last night. For him, today's awakening was more than just a chance to change his fate. It was an unprecedented experience. In his previous world, magic didn't exist, but today, he would finally be able to grasp it with his own hands. His heart pounded violently. Bryan was assigned to Classroom 8 of the freshman year, and his student ID number is number 48. Normally, the lower the student ID number, the higher the student's entrance exam score. These students usually cultivated faster because they already had a strong understanding of magical theory. Unfortunately, student number 1 in Class 8 was Bryan's old classmate, Caleb Luna. There's nothing he can do about it since he basically entered the school through connections. Caleb belonged to the Luna family, although only as a collateral branch member living in the family manor. Still, within that manor, Caleb was treated like a young master. Meanwhile, Bryan was merely the son of a servant. To Caleb, that made Bryan a servant as well. Of course, Caleb himself wasn't on the same level as someone like Ashley, the true princess of the Luna family. Caleb had tried countless times to gain her attention, but she never acknowledged him. Still, Caleb's magical talent was exceptional. Within the Luna family, he was considered a promising young talent. If he awakened the ice element, which was the Luna family's signature magic, his cultivation speed would skyrocket. After all, the Luna family possessed resources far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Even a collateral descendant like Caleb had advantages that ordinary students could never match. "Welcome, students!" The principal's voice echoed across the massive magic training ground. All 1,500 new students stood in neat rows across 20 classes, forming an impressive sight. I'm sure many of you have been eagerly waiting for this moment. Before we begin, I want to say something important. The principal paused before continuing. Do you know what it means to become a magician? No matter where you stand in the world of magic, never forget this. Our greatest responsibility is to ensure the development of humanity and protect mankind. Beyond the peaceful cities you know, countless demons are lurking in the wild. They are always waiting for the opportunity to invade. After a long speech, the principal finally reached the moment everyone had been waiting for. All right, today, the awakening ceremony begins. I hope each of you will become rising stars in this magical world in the future. The moment the principal finished speaking, the entire playground erupted with excitement. Today marked the first step on their path to becoming magicians. Whether it meant exploring the dangerous monster territories beyond the city, or wielding immense power within the great magical cities of mankind. Bryan was student number 48, meaning he would be the last person in his class to awaken. Their class teacher, also their magic mentor, Mr. Martin, stood at the front of the classroom. The process was simple. When their name was called, students would step forward, place their hands on the awakening stone, and quietly sense the power within. "Hey, you got in through connections," Jack Landale sneered from the side. "You're not going to fail your awakening, are you? Someone like you shouldn't waste the energy of such an expensive awakening stone." Jack was one of Bryan's old classmates. When Jack mentioned the possibility of awakening failure, Bryan felt a slight chill in his heart. Strictly speaking, he didn't belong to this world. If his body was somehow different from everyone else here, things could go terribly wrong. "Bryan, ignore that fool," Avery whispered from nearby. "Wait until you awaken your magic element and show him. Let him see what kind of fool he is." Bryan didn't say anything. Normally, he would have destroyed Jack with his sharp tongue, but today, he simply wasn't in the mood. Partly because he was nervous, and partly because the blackened necklace around his neck had been trembling strangely all morning. This necklace had belonged to his grandpa. Bryan strongly suspected that this necklace, left by his grandpa for him, was somehow connected to the massive changes that had happened to the world. That day, when Bryce digged through Grandpa's old room, he had found this necklace that was left for Bryan. Bryan wore it for the day and fell asleep with it and woke up in this world. Now the thing was shaking like it was possessed. His hands trembled uncontrollably. "What the hell is wrong with you? You're just a regular necklace. Act like one."
Caleb Luna!
Mr. Martin called out. Immediately, the classroom erupted with whispers. "Oh, wow, that's Caleb Luna. He's so handsome, and he's ranked #1 in the class. I wonder what element he'll awaken." Caleb stood up calmly. Though he appeared indifferent, he clearly enjoyed the attention. He walked confidently toward the awakening stone. "Caleb Luna," Mr. Martin said with a smile. "You're from the famous Luna family, the Ice Clan, right?" "Yes," Caleb replied politely. "Good. If you awaken the ice element, you'll have a great advantage. But remember, talent alone isn't enough. Hard work matters too." Caleb nodded respectfully, but inwardly he thought, talent doesn't determine everything. But without talent and family background, you'll always stay at the bottom of society. Caleb placed his hand on the awakening stone. Immediately, faint starlight began to shimmer across its surface. Lines of light crawled across the stone and onto Caleb's hand like glowing veins. Everyone held their breath. Caleb stood motionless, eyes closed. "Please awaken ice element." "If it isn't ice, I would be worthless to the family." Suddenly, crunch! A chilling frost began spreading across the awakening stone. The icy aura intensified. The edges of the stone slowly froze, forming a layer of frost. "It's ice element!" "It really is ice element!" The classroom exploded with excitement.
Several girls even screamed.
Caleb opened his eyes with satisfaction. As expected, ice. With the Luna family's resources supporting him, his rise to power was only a matter of time. "Excellent," Mr. Martin praised. "A very pure ice element. With talent like this, you will sure become a great mage in this magical world." "A true genius." "Thanks," replied Caleb. The awakenings continued. Next, earth element. Next, ice element. Bryan noticed something. Although another student also awakened ice, only a faint frost mist appeared. Unlike Caleb, his awakening stone didn't freeze. The difference in talent was obvious. Next, Olivia Eve, water element. "What?" Olivia wailed. "Why water? I wanted ice!" The entire class burst into laughter. Next, Avery Cross. Avery turned to Bryan. "Bryan, I'm going." "Good luck," Bryan said. Avery placed his hand on the awakening stone. A small vortex of wind immediately appeared, swirling around the stone. The teacher's robes fluttered in the breeze. "Very good," Mr. Martin nodded approvingly. "Wind element." The awakenings continued.
Then suddenly,
A burst of orange flame erupted from the awakening stone. "Fire element!" The entire class gasped. It was Sophie Larson, a quiet-looking girl. Despite her gentle appearance, she had awakened the most aggressive element among beginner mages: fire. Finally, almost everyone had awakened their magic. Only one person remained. Number 48, Bryan Lambert. Bryan's heart pounded violently. No one was more nervous than him. "You sold everything to get here," Jack mocked. "If you're lucky, you might awaken water or light. But if you fail, then everything your father sacrificed will be wasted." "Can you shut your mouth?" Avery snapped angrily. Bryan walked toward the awakening stone. Whispers followed him. "That's the guy who got in through connections. His grades were terrible. He might even fail his awakening." Caleb leaned close as Bryan passed him. "If you fail," he said coldly, "you might as well jump into a river. Don't embarrass your family." Bryan ignored him. He stepped forward and faced Mr. Martin. "Place your hand here," the Mr. Martin said. Bryan's hands trembled. "Steady," Mr. Martin reminded him. Bryan gripped his right hand with his left and finally placed his palm on the awakening stone. Cold, The stone felt icy. Then suddenly, a strange current surged through his body. "Close your eyes," Mr. Martin instructed. "Sense your spiritual world." Bryan obeyed. At first, there was only darkness, an empty void. Did I actually fail to awaken? No, this can't be. "See, what did I say? I told y'all he's gonna fail. Ha ha ha," laughed Jack. "Shut it, Jack," said Avery angrily. "Be quiet," shouted Mr. Martin. "Bryan is still awakening." Then, a purple arc of lightning suddenly flashed across the darkness. A tiny cluster of purple stardust appeared in the void. Bryan froze.